Welcome to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next. If you're not too careful, you just might learn something. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next, and if you're not too careful, you just might learn something. So in this episode, we're on Ole Blue, and we are going to be cutting out the passenger side floor pan today, and that's going to involve some more cutting out a bunch of spot welds. Let's get cracking, shall we? I'm going to drill make this with a much better dimple with the drill bit. Then that way my spot weld cutter has something good to sit into there. Alright, now I'm going to rotate this around and I'm going to get these three fellas here too. And yeah, you pretty much want to buy these things by the gross, because they don't seem to last too long. We're going to have to drill that out before I can get to that one. Apparently a very nice place for mice to live. Always got to do it the hard way. Alright, now we can get to this bottom rivet here, or spot weld. We're probably dropping about 100 pounds of rust off of this truck every time I roll it around. That's good for 1/10 and 1/4. There, that one's clear. You learn something new every day. So it looked like there was only 4 spot welds, here, 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 and here. And there was no indication of any other ones, but in reality, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more welds, but you couldn't see them from this side. Had to go inside the cab and scrape off all the seam sealer, and then you could see the little dimples where the spot welds were. So that's once we drill all these guys out, now they'll start popping loose a little better. Ouch. And there we go. Now once we get these couple fellas out down here, then all we've got left is this little bit right here. And looks like a tiny bit here. So nothing too major. So we've got this piece that came out of here, and then this piece that came up out of here, and that's it. That's what's left of that. All right, so now that I've got that cab mount box out from under here, then we can start making preparations to install our new floor pan. Now they give you enough floor pan, you know, to cover a really wide area. Now in some cases, you may not need to use the whole floor pan, and you'll end up trimming some of it out. But since the rust damage is pretty severe in the floor area, I'm going to use as much new metal as I can. So now with that, you have to be careful, because on the assembly line, when they built these vehicles, they use a lot of like a urethane seam sealer, and you know, you'll find literally gobs and gobs of it, and you know, you try and scrape out as much as you can, and that helps, because then when you're using your DA sander, then you know, it won't gum up your discs as quick, you know, if you've already done scrape most of it out. So because you're not going to be able to just arbitrarily sandblast everything, you know, we're going to have to get in here and sand and grind in some areas to make you know, to clean out areas and get the rust, get rid of the rust, because we don't want it coming back anytime soon. So anywho, so what I'm going to do is, now that I've scraped some of this urethane sealer, seam sealer, I've got a little more to go here, and then I'll vacuum it all out, and then we can lay this in here and start marking basically where our cuts will need to go. And I noticed that this floor pan doesn't have the hole for you to access the cab mount, which I thought was kind of odd. But so we're gonna have to make that, because you need that hole to be able to get your bolt down through there to secure the cab to the chassis. So what we'll do is, once we get all our, you know, lumpy goob out of here, then this pan will lay in there flat, and then we can go in from the back side and mark the floor pan, so we know exactly where this hole has to go. So what we'll do here, I've got a little more seam sealer here that has to come up.
a good heavy-duty scraper, not a putty knife. These are actually, really thick, solid scrapers that are designed for either scraping gaskets or, heavy-duty jobs where you just really need to get in there and pound through there and get that stuff out. So, because this stuff doesn't come out without a fight. So, vacuum all my stuff up out of here. We always want to keep it as clean and tidy as possible. And you'll find the more that you clean, it's like the more stuff comes out of nowhere and you have no idea where it's coming from. But that's the whole point. We want to get it all cleaned up and get it put back to as close to good as new as we can get it. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but you can try and use a Sharpie, but it's not going to do very well unless the metal is just absolutely clean, doesn't have any kind of oil or spooge on it. So the best way to do is just use a pick and just scribe a really good scratch mark where the outside perimeter of the floor pan goes. And then what we'll do is we'll measure down about a ½ inch, and that'll be our actual cut line. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flange it so we don't have a bump in the floor where one piece of metal is laying over the other. So, and then the other thing too, I've got this support. Let me zoom the camera out a bit. You can see what's going on there. There's a support. It goes down here underneath the floor that's got some spot welds in it that we'll need to get rid of those too, so that when we actually make our cut, we'll be able to get our floor pan out in one piece. And then as far as like over here, we'll salvage as much good metal as we can. This looks really bad here, but it's not so much really, because this is where the bottom of the cab mount would be. So there'll be a good piece of metal underneath here when we go to put this all back together. So now here's what I was talking about before, where sometimes it's easier to find your spot welds. Sometimes it'll be on one side of the metal and sometimes it'll be on the other. Now these guys here, those were real easy to see up this way. Those were easy to see from inside the cab floor. But these guys, when you get in under all that rust, it's a little more challenging. So what we'll do is we'll just use some carbon choke cleaner and a good old shop rag, and we'll just get our rag nice and soaked, because this is just all grease and spooge and maybe some undercoating at one time. And if we just wipe this down, I did go over it with a scraper a little bit first, so I got the majority of it off, but and so you can see them a lot easier now. That one there, here, here. So this way I'll go ahead and drill those. Now this bracket here is going to stay in place, okay, and we'll weld it to the new section of floor pan. drill bit here starting to get a little on the dull side. I'll show you here what I was talking about. You can't tell where that there was a spot weld there from the top. You can't hardly tell that there was a spot weld there where I drilled those pilot holes, so it just made sense to find them from the other side and then drill them through, and then we can go ahead and drill down through the top here with the spot weld cutter. A lot easier. And I got all my spot welds cut out of that reinforcing bracket. Now it's time to measure in and cut the old rotten floor pan out. Alright, so now we got most of this floor cut out, and I just need to break what's left of those spot welds loose through here. So that'll be the next step. Now we can take our floor pan out, or our bad section. You see where all the rod is. Now this one's the better of the two. The driver's side's a little bit worse, but for the sake of showing how we're doing this, I'll just do the passenger side first here. Alright, so the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to flange the edge around here as best I can using this tool here, which is a flanging tool. And what that does is you put it on the lip of your metal there and pull your trigger, and it creates a little step for your new floor pan to lay into. That way you don't have a bump in your floor, so everything stays at the same level. So we'll go ahead and get that done and all out of the way. And then before we actually go welding anything, we'll have to clean all these parts up. We'll have to spot blast in here and get all that nice and spiffy before we put the torch to anything. All right, so that's laying in there pretty good. Now, I don't care what they say, you know, every floor pan or cab corner or whatever you get, you know, is going to require some finessing, because I haven't ever heard of or seen, you know, any panel that just fits absolutely perfectly. So now, of course, obviously you want your main body lines and creases to be right. And, you know, this is a good high quality panel. I didn't get any of the super cheap stuff. And, you know, it's the same thickness as the sheet metal that the cab was originally made out of. And it's, you know, they're real generous with how they go around. We know a little bit of excess, so you can trim it back if you have to make it, you know, fit where you're cutting and that sort of thing. So so I'm real happy with it so far. Now we're not gonna weld any of this in yet, because in my opinion, really, to do this right, there's so much stuff, so many places that get hidden once you have that floor pan down, this this structural reinforcement rib here for one, you've got rust hiding in here that needs to be blasted out. It's just stuff like that that you're just not going to be able to get to really good, even with the cab floor as it were before we even cut anything out. So, while we have it open, we'll roll it out the door here and, blast all these sections off and then shoot them with, some etching primer and epoxy to seal them up real good. And then ultimately, we'll put some undercoating under there, and I'm going to put some Dynamat here on the inside of the cab. That'll help keep it from being so ringy, and it'll make the truck a lot quieter when you're going down the road. So, and that'll also help protect it from further rusting. And anybody with a sharp eye will notice that there's some other metal work we're going to need to do behind the floor pan. That we got a little bit of rot back here, and you can't get anything like these pieces here, so you have to make those by hand. So we'll have to fabricate a piece of 16 gauge to go in there and cut all that rust out, which is right up in here, and then and weld it in place, and then seal it down, and then that'll be good. And everything else is looking fairly decent. It'll clean up nice. I got my my flanging tool. I got it a nice little lip all the way around there to tuck my panel down into. And the one thing I didn't mention on the flip side of that is on the other side of that anvil, there's a punch. So as you're going along, you punch holes into the sheet metal, and that's where you'll weld through. So you're not sitting there drilling 50,000 holes. You just go in there and there's your hole. So, but that's going to be it for today. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to roll this thing out and do some blasting and some priming and sealing of what I blast anyway, and then we'll get this piece fixed here, and hopefully we'll be done with this side of the floor, and we can work on the cab corner. Appreciate you watching. Please subscribe if you like what you see, and make sure you click the notification icon so you'll get notified the next time we post a video up. Feel free to comment. We welcome all the comments, and we'll even feed the trolls every now and then. And you can also email me at MacGyversWorkshop@gmail.com. Usually I can get back to you pretty quick. I try to stay on top of that. So stay tuned for our next video. We're going to be hitting Ole Blue hot and heavy here, because the the body work is very time consuming and a lot of steps involved, especially with all the sheet metal work. So stay tuned, and we'll go through it together and we'll learn together. So stay safe, stay well. See you next time.